Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to our continuing reviews of The Mandalorian. Jumping into chapter 23 this week, just headed for the finale, The Spies. So we're back to the beginning with this episode. So I feel like we're back more and more familiar territory. But a really nice, chunky episode. So I just want to get into things. I want to welcome, of course, my fellow Fandalorians from Smirking Reviews. You know him, you love him. It's Rob Stone.
What's going on, Bubs?
Looking great with the Wolverine mask, man. That is stellar looking. And of course, from a Dawn of Ice and Fire, you know him, you love him. It is Don Willie right here.
Greetings, everyone. And yeah, this is the way.
This is the way. Oh man, what a way to go out. I know we gotta hold on. We gotta hold on to the end because pause. But let's actually get into our brief little overviews on this because I'm really curious how you guys felt about this. I'm gonna give my little spoiler review. I thought it was awesome. Lot of stuff. I love the intrigue. I love the mysteries that it kind of sets things up for. We got one more episode, so it's like so much has to happen. But how did you guys think about it? Rob, let's start off with you. What did you think about this week's episode?
I mean, it was cliche, but really great. It was, I'm gonna be me and say, well, I mean, I wish this was episode 3.
Sure.
But we're, that it's done and over. This is where we're at. So, I mean, they say it's the journey, but not this season. I think this season will always have an asterisk by it, but this is hopefully the way that they pull themselves back up to greatness and to going into what we get next.
Nice. Don, what about you? How did this week's episode hit you?
This week on Bo. I mean, pretty. I mean, like at this point, it's the Bo-Katan show.
Sure.
Which I'm not actually upset about because I happen to like Bo-Katan and also Katie Sackhoff as an actress anyway. So it kind of doubly works out for me. Yeah. So,
Excellent. Well, as I said, definitely a bunch of stuff to hit on here. Ramona Floyd jumping in with the chat right here. Hello, glad you were able to join us live today. We'll see who else manages to get in. But yeah, a lot of stuff, really long episode this week. So let's get into things. And that is, of course, returning to 21st century Los Angeles with Blade Runner. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Coruscant. Sorry, there was really much of a Blade Runner feel to that whole opening. And while I'm jabbing, it was awesome. I thought it looked great. I loved the kind of feel for it and the sort of shadowy stuff, had that little kind of film noir bit. But we get to see Elia Kane back meeting up with an Imperial probe droid, which I thought was maybe a bit on the nose to be floating around Coruscant. They're very particular looking. But we get our nice reveal, of course, with our big bad this week of Moff Gideon. So, Don, let's kick things off with you a bit. What did you think about our whole opening bit, running back into Kane and kind of the reveal of the plans for the Mandalorians?
Firstly, I was like, "Oh, my Star Wars crush is back." Elia Kane shows up looking very sleek in the whole Blade Runner-esque kind of underground of Coruscant. So that was cool. And then, Giancarlo Esposito graces the screen, and it's about to be something very, very serious. She tells him about what they have going on with the Mandalorians being on Navarro and hearing about how the disparate groups have decided to come together to retake Mandalore. And It's like, oh, okay. So the bad guys are keeping tabs on the Mandalorians. Um, what for? So just that whole opening there, and I don't know if you guys wanted to touch on this later, or I can
Oh,
go.
we'll get it. We'll jump into the Shadow Council kind of little bit there in just a sec. It was just
Okay.
again, I thought it was kind of interesting how much that you're right that there was honestly the concern for Navarro that hey, the pirate attack on Navarro failed, and it was the Mandalorians who came in. So it's like, how much will they watch the Mandalorians, and how much is Navarro really kind of like central in with their plans? Because it hasn't felt like that, and yet this was the obvious move that they wanted.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you start to see how the pieces come together and what the plans that that they're being laid and the breadcrumbs to how we get to the sequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
um it's it's interesting to just see how it gets laid out as a roadmap. So from one character making a decision somewhere that may not seem like it means anything, and then 3 or 4 episodes later it's like, oh, okay, so that's what that was for. So that's how that all kind of coalesces together with this and the things that we find out even further on in the episode. So just this very small short dialogue. um yeah, the smaller amount of dialogue still fills in so much in terms of story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm starting to get a little too deep, and it's
That's all right. I know you want to jump to the council, so let me jump over and let's check with Rob with what he thought of this opening, because I know we've had our discussions on the Pershing episode, mostly that good stuff, good bit of it smaller. So I was kind of curious, Rob, how you thought about this kind of opening leading us into where we were going to end up here.
Well, I got to tell you, Bob, coming from Department H, I would have never let one of those Imperials get that long of a leash. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it
That's
wasn't
fair.
very stealthy. I mean, the thing is right there. I mean, I would have smelled her coming a mile away. So, I mean, it really looked good. It hit all the right notes of film noir meets, techno cyberpunk. But as far as actual, missions go, I give it a D minus. Bad stealth and bad job going to the New Republic for letting these ex-Imperials just go wherever they want. Don't trust them, bub.
I think that's good advice, though, because as we've definitely seen, she has taken very much advantage of the trust that the amnesty program has given her. And yeah, you really should have just any other looking droid could have played that bit. But it was good to see Esposito back. We've been waiting for Moff Gideon to kind of raise his head. And this does lead us into kind of the first bit we get to really see of the kind of larger imperial plans, world presence, what's going on with Gideon as he leads through his. I saw someone describe it as those big laser barriers from Phantom Menace that he walks through with all these open up through the next red set, next red set. And we get a couple of interesting things. One, we get these kind of Mandalorian stormtrooper blended troops, which we see a lot more later on. But also, it seems to be he's walking past some cloning tanks before he ends up in with the big meeting with the rest of the Shadow Council. So we're given a little interplay. We're given a little behind the scenes bit, which is definitely not what he's pleading, because later on in the council, he does specifically mention, hey, Hux, cloning is your thing. I don't care about, I'm just doing my own stuff. So he feels like he's He's playing the new litter, but he's keeping stuff close to his vest. So, Wolvie, what did you think about our kind of big Shadow Council intro, and the first shot of somebody who's going to be really exciting to see going forward? Curious what you think that is.
First, we got to get back to those slugs. Coming from me, let me tell you something. There's a lot of me's running around right now, and I don't like it one bit. Because I'm already, the best there is at what I do. Now there's a whole bunch of those guys out there. Now imagine Moff Gideon has like a 1,000 of him. It's like Gus Fring on steroids. We're doomed. The whole Star Wars universe would be doomed. You need like 1,000,000 Heisenbergs to fight this guy. I don't know what to tell you about it other than it was really cool. And Xander Berkeley doesn't get enough work anymore.
Fair enough, but you're right. A whole army of Moff Gideons would just spell doom for the entire Republic and the Imperials. He'd be ruling himself, basically. Don, thoughts on our Shadow Council bit here? Nope. You're on mute. There we go.
Sorry about that. All right. So I definitely liked just the lead up to it, because you see Gideon there, and the hologram switches perspective. So now we're seeing his side of it, and then at first it's like, yes, you can see that it is an Imperial base of some sort, but you don't necessarily realize that it is underground, and then when you think about any other Imperial base that we've encountered, there are windows. There are huge windows. So going back and watching it again, it's like, oh, wait. Yeah, this is all, just enclosed metal kind of tubing and hallways. I'm like, yeah, that was one visual clue that this is a little different, because it felt even colder than when you're watching, anything else having to do with Star Wars and the Empire specifically. Like, this feels more enclosed.
Sure.
And so, when he's, walking by the new stormtroopers, or the Dark Trooper 4.0 now or something like that, you see the evolution of the armor and how it's starting to look more like the First Order rather than the Empire. But it is a little more Mandalorian inspired, and for anyone who's like, oh man, I didn't know it was going to be Beskar, like, that should have been your first clue there. Like, the armor looks more like the Mandalorians than it did before. And him going through the laser grids, and then finally getting into this room and seeing these other Shadow council members, and getting to see like Hux's father when he was actually alive and doing his thing. Grand Admiral Thrawn's right-hand man, ripped straight out of the novels and the video games.
Yeah, Pelion!
And hearing Thrawn, just hearing the name Thrawn, because this is the first time that we've heard anyone from the Empire mention him. The only other person who's mentioned him was Ahsoka. That was last season. So now it's like, oh, okay. It isn't just that Ahsoka is going to be going and looking for him. He's not playing any role in any of the rest of this. It's like, no, Thrawn will be part of this somehow. Yeah, we know that he's debuting in Ahsoka, but they said that there's supposed to be a movie that culminates all of these different Star Wars series So obviously, Grand Admiral Thrawn is going to kind of almost be like the Thanos of this kind of corner of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Um, so the thing with Moff Gideon, though, he tried to make it seem like he isn't doing anything with cloning. We already know that he is. He's doing it on his own. Um, he obviously has whatever issues with Mandalorians specifically, because no one else mentioned Mandalorians at all. He was the one that brought them up. And he was saying, hey, well, yeah, we don't see Thrawn around here. Maybe it's time for new leadership. Like, yeah, this man is here to make a power play. And, with the Emperor not being there and them just trying to hold together what little they have of an empire, you see, just how tumultuous things can be. It's like, yes, they may not speak in raised tones at each other, but there's always kind of the threat of violence there.
Oh yeah.
And when he asked for the Praetorian Guard and all that, I think they kind of realized, okay, well, if he can be a target, and we know how strong he is, what happens when they find out about the rest of us?
Sure.
So.
Well, and I think that was one of the kind of cool thing that they did so much. They covered so much ground kind of in this little conversation, is we get to see that we're talking about what in the expanded universe would be the Imperial Warlords era. Only they're turning it on the heads, saying, yeah, we want to keep looking like we're warlords and we're disjointed and we're fighting over bits of territory. We don't want them to know that we're actually all secretly working together, which is great. And if we are going to be seeing Thrawn soon, which we will be, that kind of sets up a larger force that is now prepared to, be his sword as he swipes it back and tries to retake the galaxy. We do see little bits of infighting here and there, but that's just standard material. Again, having Gilad Pelion show up, talking about Thrawn and being everything prepared. I mean, I so much cannot wait to see more of him. And he looks perfect. He looks exactly like he should, which is awesome. And we also see the control of resources, that Pelion and Hux have kind of the majority of the resources while everyone else has to look a little more disparate and stuff. And that always causes issues. We had the mention of the new leadership coming in, and Hux is leading Project Necromancer. Ooh, who could that possibly be referring to? Some evil magic user from the dead. Yeah. So obviously we have our Emperor program, and he's looking for Pershing's research, which obviously Gideon may not really want the Emperor coming back if he wants his play, like you're saying there, Don. Why else would he have taken out Pershing and not have him captured or, secreted away or something like that? So we get a lot of cool little interplay of what's going on in the background with the Imperials. And right, Gideon's the one that mentions Mandalorians, but everybody reacts to it. Well, we can't have the Mandalorians all together because that would be bad. So it gives us our stakes for the episode as well, which I think was really good. Rob, did you have anything else you wanted to add on to that before we move on? Nope, we're good. All right, so let's move on to the Mandalorians, as it were. We get an awesome shot. I love this. That light cruiser coming over Navarro with the giant Mandalorian sigil painted on that. How much paint does it take to paint one of these things? Is it by numbers? How do they lay it out? Anyway, it's probably a droid job, I'm guessing. But that looked really cool. I think the fleet looks awesome. And you got to think, even from the covert now, which is this like small little bit looking up going, oh, the other Mandalorians have arrived. And they're not living in sewers or caves or tents. Damn. Which sets up a beautiful kind of interplay where we start to see how are these two clans effectively going to start to intermix. Will they be able to play nice, or will they not? Which I thought was really good. You know, this kind of interplays right into the kind of dinner and discussions and such that they kind of have afterwards. So maybe let's sidetrack real quick into our mini Grogu mech of what used to be IG-11. Rob, Grogu's got a mech, a little deadly assassin mech he could drive around and hit yes and no. Do you want your kid to drive around in something like that? Man, those little motorized cars seem bad enough. I think a mech would be he'd do exactly what Grogu does here.
Yeah, I mean, it's on point, but no. Like, I'm immediately with Din, like, nope. We test drive this thing. Nope. The kid's got robot arms now. He's got the Force, and he can break my freaking hand. Nope. Yeah, why don't you just give the kid a gun too? Like, nope. If he can't talk yet, I don't think he should be driving around in his robot. Nope. Nuh-uh. I mean, it was something to do. I gotta give it. They found something to do. It's a way to not have Taika have to be there. All he had to do is say yes and no into a microphone or into his telephone. Hey, Taika, just say yes or no real quick. So that saves on that. It's a clever idea, and it gives him the moment. It lets him communicate the thing later. So it has a use. So as far as Grogu moments go, it's probably the best in the season to me. And yeah, I am considering all the other little things, but this was actually a functional thing that happened with this character this season, and I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I gotta say, I would never have thought. I did not think of all the possibilities of what they were going to do with IG-11. This was nowhere near my list, so I had to appreciate the surprise there.
But no, like that's just he doesn't like droids already. It's almost like he has to look at one that he did like. He's walking around in his husk. It's kind of creepy. Mm-hmm. But Grogu's kind of creepy anyway, so it works.
That's a fair statement.
It is. He sucks on little amphibian eggs. He's a murderer.
He's a peace-loving murderer.
Yeah.
Don, what did you think of our little Grogu mech?
No.
It's unanimous, folks.
No, you know what? What I will say is, that, parents, be prepared for the onslaught of, can we have mech Grogu for Christmas? So,
you are right. There's going to be the little remote control robot-y thing. There's going to be no's and yeses in
Funko
every living
Pops. Giant Funko Pops. You know you're getting one. I'm going to pre-order it now. It's there.
And some sort of add-on addition to some app where, you run around as a Grogu in the mech suit.
Fortnite.
Hitting yes and no.
Oh, there is totally going to be a Fortnite Grogu in IG-11 mech or IG-12. Yes. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. But other than that, no.
I want to see the cosplay of that.
Oh, that's going to be interesting.
Oh.
That'll be super interesting. Cool. But somebody just
Somebody has to be Grogu and then have the robot around them. So they'd be at the
It's gonna be a
controls.
baby Bjorn. You're
Yeah,
gonna put
you'd
little
have to.
baby Bjorn
Yeah,
on.
you'd have to. Yep, you'd have to have the Grogu head on and stuff.
Disney,
That'd
I
be the
hope you're
best way
paying
to do it.
attention here. Yeah.
I just gave all you cosplayers free blueprints. Just say some asshole on the internet gave you the idea.
No, no,
No.
no, no.
Yeah, and I do love how Din was just like immediately no. And then I was really surprised as he was walking down the street with him just going, yes, 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 behind him. He didn't like crunch the speaker or whatever. It was just, you could see it was just the exhausted parent of like, he's just gonna keep doing this. He's just gonna keep doing this.
Pretty much. Listen. Yeah, he would. Yeah, how he hasn't got slapped around, or yes. Look, I know he's a baby, but he's also at this point like nearly 55 years old.
See, that's true. You know, he should be
Manners.
able to do this at this point.
Simple
But it's
manners.
but it, I mean, you know, just again from a storytelling functionality standpoint, this is so much better than him just being in his little crib. Now he can walk around, he can do things. Obviously, later on, he can actually, you know, stop a fight or get in the way. He's got more of a physical presence now, which I think makes a lot of things easier. It allows him to do more things, certainly. And they've got to build on him and not just have him like lounging around all the time looking cute.
Wait, can we talk about the fact that two warriors got stopped by stopped fighting because of a kid in a mech suit saying no? Like, what kid get the way
Yeah. Well,
to the death here?
I mean, yes or no. Let's actually we can work this all into, because it is kind of a giant bit here that we have with our introductions of characters and such getting around and the clans kind of coming together. Because in some ways, you're right, it is silly, but I also think everyone's playing their part. I mean, I felt kind of almost the pause axe battle over chess really is just the release point of these two clans that should be talking shit to each other and to see how tough they are. Because you're right, you shouldn't have somebody stop it and just be like, no. And yeah, it's baby Grogu and he's, you know, cute. And maybe that's, you know, part of the package there. But I don't know if so much how much these two groups really want to fight versus the expectations that they should have beef. Because all of the intro kind of goes on really well. They stand off, but the armorer is the one who steps up, is like, hey, we have other clans showing up. Let's fix them a feast. Which is, in a way, automatically exclusionary of her own clan because they can't take off their helmets and eat. They just got to watch the other people, you know, eat. So I don't know. What do you guys let's jump in? How did you guys think that the clans kind of coming together worked? Do you think that there was real tension? Do you think that they're just trying to figure out how to maneuver each other? Do they want, you know, would they like rather be Mandalorians? How did you feel that this kind of the two clans coming together went?
It was cliche, but again, but I mean, but you're right, there was a weariness to it. There wasn't like an all in on this. It was kind of like they just needed somebody to get it out of their system, like they said, like this was gonna happen. So they just kind of rolled with it, and almost like this kind of scene is expected. So they just got it over with. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's reasonable to expect them to have some kind of pushback when two ideologies, even if you know it's long ancient history basically, and they've seen their own fall of their own civilization because of their divisions. That it is like just kind of like, oh, okay, you know, like we got to do this, so we're gonna have to start thinking more outside the box. It was an interesting scene. as
Mhm.
well. I mean, but again, just something we've seen before, but just it's an expected scene for this situation.
Don?
Um, listen, you know what? Look, this whole thing with the clans and how they should or should not be getting along. I mean, it's to be expected. You know, the Mandalorians have had how many civil wars over the millennia? Um,
Yeah.
you know, the the intro in this show to other Mandalorians outside of Din Djarin's covert was, oh, you do something different than what I do, then you're not a Mandalorian. Only the way that I live is the true way of Mandalorian.
Mhm.
You know, and just seeing the cultural differences, you know, that's not stuff that you just kind of push aside overnight. So, you know, when they finally do meet up, it's a thing of, all right, you're here with somebody that we kind of partially trust. You know, one person is a foundling who, you know, lost the way and went and got redeemed, and
Mhm.
the other one is, you know, supposedly a Mandalorian princess, uh, but she has been brought very, very low, and we decided to take her in, and now, you know, she's doing one of the things that we have been taught never to do, and she is bringing a few thousand other people who do this as well with her. You know, so yeah, it's definitely going to be tension because, you know, again, um, when Axe and Paz were playing whatever the game is that they were playing, you know, when there was a clash of cultures in terms of even the rules of that game, you see how things just kind of escalated. You know, it was kind of like a powder keg. I mean,
Mhm.
you know, for any real world examples, I mean, think about like Monopoly and people having their own rules in Monopoly versus what are the actual established rules. You know, and people, I'm pretty sure people have gotten into fist fights over that because it's like, this is how you play Monopoly. No, this is how I play. You know, and it's kind of
Come
like,
on, free parking, you get the money. No,
yeah,
you're not. It's just free parking. Ah! Oh yeah, the death of house rules.
yeah. So yeah, this is kind of a similar situation where it's just kind of like, well, no, we grew up playing the game like this. You guys grew up playing the game like that, and you know, this guy's like, oh, look at these primitives. Let's make up any rules that they want, and like again, look at the way he talked about Din in the last episode when he was like, "Oh, you know, he's not even a Mandalorian for real. You know, he doesn't have any Mandalorian blood in his veins." You know, so just seeing how all of that kind of was solidified with this moment,
Mhm.
those shows, like, yeah, they might wear the same kind of armor or uniforms, but that does not mean that they are the same.
Well, yeah, and that's specifically the point that Bo brings up when they get on the planet, when they end up having that dinner, that we can stand against anyone, but it's always our own infighting that takes us down. Um, which again is a beautiful scene, which we'll get to in just a minute. Um, but this initial meeting, at the very least, just sort of at least gets them together, and then we get the great. And Rob, you're quite right in the almost cliche-ish. I'll go, I'll go, I'll go, and everybody you get to see, okay, everybody from both sides is volunteering. So
I'm Spartacus.
Yeah, exactly. So I
That's
have to say,
exactly what I said.
when Paz volunteered, to me that was like the sign that things have there's a little shift going on. Because he is always like, I mean, that's Paz Vizsla, that's pre-Vizsla's descendant. He was on the Night Watch. He was taking over the planet. He believes that the dark saber, has a certain right to be in his hand, and yet he is volunteering to join this group to just help take over. To me, that's kind of the sign. Now the armor joining to go down is kind of an interesting one. I mean, I get that this is important to her, and the fact that the plan is to go to the Forge, and she just had this discussion about the Forge on Mandalore. It made sense to me, but also, is this then the kind of leaders of the two different clans are both going together to come down? Because she's usually not a frontline fighter, though obviously she can, and we've seen her kick ass in multiple battles and stuff at this point. But I gotta say, the arrival on Mandalore, man, that was just pure love in Star Wars. See the ships just reappear out of hyperspace right above the planet. It always just gets me. It was like, yeah, now it's really happening. The only question I kind of had, while it was super cool that they did the flyover and they dropped him, and you have Paz and Axe back and forth, like, wow, I never knew it was this bad. And Axe talking like, I was here when it happened. Yeah, it sucks. That was all cool, and I loved them dropping the Mandalorians. The only question, of course, I had, and it's really just that tactical point, is since you can't look down, wouldn't you want to like fly around a little bit and spot things out? Because you just sort of picked a landing area and then walked from there. A little bit more scouting ahead of time, or do they just really need to be on the ground? Maybe it just things look that different. What do you guys think?
Honestly speaking, yeah, there should have been a lot more of a flyover, just to get the lay of the land. Because again, this is some place where, for, think about it, the whole Children of the Watch believed that Mandalore was cursed.
Right.
Just a little while ago. You're gonna say like maybe at this point, maybe a couple of months at most. You know, um, so yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, all right, well, yeah, I want to make sure this is safe because are we really supposed to be here for real? It's like this is the mythical Mandalore, which thinking about the fact that Paz Vizsla is, from that family, like has he ever actually been to Mandalore before? You know,
Yeah.
because he was like, "Oh, this is worse than I thought, or whatever, or worse than I imagined, or whatever it was that he had said." It's still one of those things where it's like, is it only you imagining what a destroyed Mandalore will look like from the perspective of, oh man, I remember when it used to actually look like something, or is it something like him hearing the stories of what Mandalore used to look like, and then hearing about it being bombed, and just having a picture in his mind of what he thinks a glassed planet would look like. So
Well, yeah, because the armor mentioned that they were on Concordia on the moon, or at least that's where what used to be Death Watch and now is no longer. So he might have been up with them and just saw from the distance. But you're right. That's a good point.
yeah, and then the other side, Axe Wolves was like, yeah, I was here when all that went down. Which again, it's another one of those, not necessarily generational, but a transitional moment
Mm-hmm.
where, you know, this was somebody who lived on Mandalore when Mandalore was a thriving metropolis, and had the deserts outside of the cityscapes. Um, but yeah, he remembers when it was a place that people lived, and he had to be there when it all was literally getting destroyed all around him. And now he comes back to it after, after the aftermath
Mm-hmm.
of it, and all he's gonna have for the rest of his days, and until and unless they actually do some rebuilding, all he's gonna have is like, oh, I have my memories from when I was younger of how great this place used to be, and then I saw it destroyed, and now I come back, and I just all I have is kind of the final memory of this place being turned into a ruin.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, heart wrenching.
Oh yeah. No, I gotta say, I teared up several points throughout this episode. I'm not too manly to say that. Um, Rob, what did you think about our appearance and our first dropping back down onto Mandalore?
Once again, failure, failure, failure. Recon 101. You're going down even into it should be considered enemy territory. Creed and I would have had sensors put up for any kind of ship that enters Atmo. We would have had that place be an ambush site. We would have taken them out right before they even knew they were getting their mission started. But there is precedent.
Sure.
They weren't even able to protect their kids from alligator attacks, from giant birds. They didn't have scouts then, so they're not exactly a people anymore who think that far ahead.
That is a good
So they just
point.
kind of go, we got to get to the planet. We got to get there. And then they just go, and then hopefully things work out. Story wise, they just got to write it down and it happens, So it's just, but it was,
Less
just kind of,
plan, more do. I hear you.
yeah, we got to get there. We can't think about this stuff. Let's go. We got to get to the next thing.
Well, and that next thing being, lo and behold, some survivors.
This
Guess
is
who?
where I've been looking forward to the whole time. Do you mind if I just kind of, okay?
Please take it.
Because of doing the, like I'm X-Men 97, I'm trying to do the Wolverine thing, voice actors, blah blah blah. But the two actors that are in this scene, one, I both of them I knew, like I knew from somewhere. So I wanted to talk about the surviving scout who was played by Charles Baker, who was Skinny Pete in the Breaking Bad series, and Charles Parnell. Charles Parnell was the surviving captain, and if you're voice acting, if you follow voice actors, you know that he played the awesome Jefferson Twilight on the Venture Brothers, where he was basically the Blade character on that show. So kudos to hiring this guy for this part. So give Jefferson Twilight some love. I just wanted to bring that up first, right out the gate.
No, that is awesome. And I told it's funny because there was a recognizable sound, but I wasn't able to place it. And now that you mentioned it, it's totally that, and that is awesome. Um, but yeah, so we get some surviving Mandalorians. I wrote them down as pirates because they look like pirates to me. They, on their ship going across the glass sea. Uh, this to me, this was an interesting bit. Just because some people survived, there's always survivors. That makes sense. And sure, they've got wounded. That also makes sense. But they did recognize Bo Katan pretty quickly. I mean, she was, if they'd been waiting around that long, the leader at the time. But from a distance, they were definitely able to hear and spot signs pretty well. So I don't know. They seem to have a fair amount of introductory knowledge. Is the first thing that I kind of noted. Um, and they know how to get to the forge, which is also very awesome. So they're kind of perfect for what they need, outside of having some wounded. Um, but I don't know. What did you guys make of our Mandalorian survivors showing up? Because they raise some questions that I think are really important to continue on as we go further.
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I mean, they can't. They're apparently their driving skills are just as bad as ours. When we see something about to happen, we keep driving towards it. Apparently.
Sure.
But other than that, no, I liked the whole idea of that. Like, it made me think of like when they had in spoilers for, I think either Clone Wars or I think it's Rebels maybe, where you see the clones had kind of ramshackled, put together some big old equipment, and that was their home, and they traveled around on it. I always thought that was a really unique design in a Star Wars thing, and I like the design for this of like how else would you get around fast on this terrain? How would they adapt to survive to this? That's what I was focusing more on. Was like I always felt like there was going to be more people that were going to join up. So this is a nice way to do it, and then seeing how they had survived. I mean, but again, there's so many conveniences in this thing that we have to. This is an episode that makes you have to suspend your disbelief by the conveniences of it all, because they want to move along and tell the story. And that is definitely a little bit of a cop out here because they had ample time throughout this season to tell a full, maybe a story with a little less potholes, things like that.
Sure.
And again, that's a discussion for more times. But just for right now, I mean, I think that they handled it as best they could, and I really liked that these characters had character. They didn't just they hired people that could convey a lot with their voices and how they looked, and I thought that in that respect it was all pretty cool. The other parts, again, you have to like kind of look past if you can or can't. So
Right. Don, thoughts?
So my first thought was pirates here? Why? I'm like, they just can't get rid of them, can they? And they literally showing up on a pirate vessel, and then see them with Mandalorian suits, and like, sorry, is that Lady Bo-Katan? We recognize your voice. And I'm just like, this isn't creepy at all. Yeah, and then like, yeah, we still serve you. You're the rightful queen. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this is just all right. Well, we got Mandalorian scavengers. All right, so let's see how this is gonna work out. And yeah, it was good to see some familiar faces from other things and not just super famous cameos.
Right.
But actors who are actors, and who have done some phenomenal character work. So kudos to Disney, Lucasfilm for making that decision or those decisions. Yeah, and why drive directly towards the big monster? It's like South Park when they keep on having that joke. It's coming right at us. Like,
well,
yeah, you're the one driving towards it, though.
Look, I think he steered into it, to be perfectly honest. At that last minute, it looks like he turned it go right into him, which, again, raises some questions that I have with them. But before we get, because, yeah, the whole last bit kind of is very exciting and raises some really interesting questions. I did want to touch real briefly on Bo's little speech there at dinner, where you had the surviving pirates are talking about, oh, we hid out as much as we could, but they were just abandoning us. They had no fort. They had all this because we couldn't surrender. And Bo-Katan really just kind of laying it all out. I did surrender. Everything was lost. I was just trying to save the last of the people. I gave Gideon the Darksaber, and he still betrayed us and wiped everyone out and finished glassing the planet. I mean, in this moment, you see so much of what she has been carrying. It wasn't like, she was beaten or anything. She gave up. She saw the end. And I mean, I'm almost tearing up again just thinking about it. And yeah, hats off to Katie Sackhoff for just delivering all the feels with this. And then how that's reinforced by Din coming up afterwards with the, I never knew any of it. We always thought that things happened differently. And that he doesn't give a shit about the Darksaber. Yeah, this thing that you care, we don't care about this. I follow you because you're fucking awesome. As your honor and loyalty and character and all those really big things. And that's where I will serve you until your song is done. I know there's a lot of people that ship these two, and I don't really care about that. To me, I prefer the relationship that they have from respect and honor, each coming after each other. To me, that's where the meat is. Whether or not they're necking in the background, who gives a crap? The fact that as warriors, they have that appreciation for each other. And the point where almost the most bottom place, and it really sets things up because she was there. We can beat anyone. It's always the fighting between us that takes us down. And I think that that's really true, where they can show where their strength is together. And I'm hoping that's really what we're going to be seeing when we get to our next episode. Because they definitely run into complications by the end of this one. So yeah, any thoughts on that real quick from you guys before we move on to the Forge and the giant beast? They really like the giant beasts, the Mandalorians. They need to find planets without giant beasts. That's all I'm saying.
It's the only way to prove just how tough they actually are.
I had hoped that we were getting a mythosaur all of a sudden, just out of nowhere. That would have made it worth it.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh my God, we're doing this now. You know what I mean? But again, you can't, unless they wanted to make this episode longer, which, they could have, because it's streaming. So, but budgets, whatever. I mean, it would have made a good penultimate episode. It would have redeemed a lot of things. But that's okay. We still got one more episode for the mythosaur.
Well, yeah, because again, it's got to be, right? She's got to get the mythosaur and use that to go rescue. I'm sorry, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I'm just like, oh, of course, I can see it now, all coming together, right? So yeah, so the pirates. Well, before the pirates leave the Forge, the armorer goes, "Hey, man, these wounded are bad. I should leave and take them back to the fleet." Which again makes total sense. In a way, the armor is kind of a motherly, caring figure in some ways. I mean, one that kicks ass, no doubt. But I could see, which again, until afterwards and things start happening and you start rethinking things, this all looks to me very innocent, very appropriate for what's going to happen. Get the wounded back to the fleet. Let's go in. We do spend a lot of time watching her fly up and do things, and that may be a storytelling right there. But those are the hints for our little spice things, which we'll wrap up at the end. But yeah, so we get to the Forge. We get there. The giant monster attacks, destroys the ship. They go underneath. Luckily, they're already at the Forge. Maybe hurt, reduced numbers, not as strong. that would be kind of the perfect time to be ambushed. Oh, yes, they are. Which really progressed, I thought, nicely. Not only did you have the ambush, and you got Axe willing to go away, you got Paz going, I'll cover you with the giant minigun. They beat him back, they kick ass, they follow him down, they caves turn into, is that an Imperial hallway? Is that what? And then they're screwed. So I loved how this kind of like built and transitioned. You get the, we're attacked, we're fighting them back, we're going to beat them back. Oh my God, we're screwed. It really is a classic suck them in ambush technique. Send out some troops, let them think they're winning, and then they rush right in. And this is when they make the fans happy, I think, because the action was awesome. We got to see lots of fighting, lots of blasting, lots of minigun action. This was only to be topped at the end, but we've got a monologue to talk about before we get there. So let's just talk about the ambush. Rob, let's kick things off with you. What did you think of our very emotional, this is the Forge, to, oh my God, shit's going down?
I mean, the thing that I liked the most about this was just the fact that we get, it's revealed that he's been there the whole time setting all this up. Like, I guess usually I can see all this kind of stuff coming, but I didn't see that coming. And I was as surprised as the characters were, which was nice, at least as far as audience experience for me.
Yeah.
Because then it was like, oh, we're doing this now. Because once that happened, once they started coming out of the sky, I was like, oh, this is the big everybody's going down episode. Because where you look at the clock, you know what time it is, like, you know what I mean? And they're not going to have Moff Gideon just show up making it sound like, oh, yeah, I got this. And he's like, he literally does. He's already there. He doesn't have to, like, I kept waiting for them to ambush the fleet.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think they were trying to get us to think. And for once, this every once in a while, somebody in the writer's room goes, hey, you know what would be a good idea? And they actually use it, and it works, and it surprises everyone. So that's what I feel like we got here. There's a whole lot of cliche, but like one really good, way to get it done in the end. And again, it's Giancarlo Esposito, so it's just, I mean, there's 4 stars on this show, and it's great that we have such a diverse group of interesting characters, even though one is just a puppet. Between Katie and Pedro and all of Pedro's people that help him get through the suit, and Giancarlo and the puppet. I mean, we've really got these solid characters, some we've been following forever, and here we are kind of culminating in all that. Everybody's here now, and he's not even aware of it. As he kind of starts to see, oh, you, and nobody's gonna give you not too many people that have been putting in solid work over the past 15-ish, 20 years. I mean, I know his career is longer than that, but let's focus more on when he's been really popular, which isn't in the last 15 years. And when you can get him, and he's one of those people who always brings it, no matter what he's doing. He does same as Lance Reddick, the guy who you just give them material and they will make it work. And as ridiculous as these monologues can be, and we've heard ridiculous ones, some that are pulled off, some that aren't, but in this, it's I like the dark endings. I'm glad our characters are getting the smackdown on them. Gives them something, finally some real stakes here. When you get Din all just trussed up, and it's oh yeah, this is real. You guys are all going down. And there's part of me that's already thinking all the different ways that this could go. Could this just literally Could Disney have the guts to just say this is how why Mandalore isn't mentioned in the sequel trilogy? Because they aren't around anymore. We took care of them. Like, I know they won't do that. But like my mind starts working, which means that Star Wars is working. Like the plot is working, the character's working. Throughout all the cliches, if you get to that point, they've done their job.
Mm-hmm. Right. Don, what did you think?
Moff Gideon. I mean, listen, first off, you had the ambush, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, okay, this is definitely a trap. This is definitely a trap. But we as the audience got trapped as well, trapped in our own expectations, because it was definitely the whole thing of, okay, they're going to break through the clouds, and the fleet is going to be on fire because there's going to be Star Destroyers and TIE fighters just sitting there bombing the Mandalorians to hell. And when that didn't happen, it was kind of like, huh, all right. But then right after that, cut away to, to the Mando fight with the troopers. And as soon as they said, oh, retreat, and like, oh, they're falling back, I was like, oh, Admiral Akbar, where are you, good sir? You're still alive right now. You know, we have 4 words for you to say. But nope, sorry, 3 words. I don't know why it almost sounds like 4 words when you say it though. Yeah, so it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, this is obviously a trap. Moff Gideon's going to be here, and yeah, so it's about to look really, really bad for the Mandalorians. They have no idea, and when things go from when it does that little transition from it being all rocks and definitely a cave into, oh, this is a hallway. Oh, this hallway looks familiar. Oh, Moff Gideon is here. He's been here the entire time. Oh, wow. 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 But then there is, at least one big mystery. And I'm pretty sure you guys are going to talk about it and, having to do with that hologram from earlier in the episode. Yeah, but, just seeing how that was about to transition into the fight, and I guess we'll talk about the fight in a second. But
well, no, go right on into it. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, no, go right on, because that, I mean, again, this is where the action comes in. We could probably have talked almost the whole show about even just this last little bit.
Yeah, so this was obviously interesting because here you have Din, who gets separated from everyone else, and I was sitting there like, oh man, are they going? Is Gideon just going to be like, yeah, take off his helmet? I mean, because that would have been the obvious thing. It's like, oh, you want to embarrass a Mandalorian, especially that kind of Mandalorian? You take off his helmet. Nothing more embarrassing. And if oh man, sorry, if the rumors about Pedro Pascal were not true, then this would have, quashed all of the whole, he doesn't want to play Mando anymore because he doesn't get to take off his helmet. But, we'll see what happens on just seeing beat down that he takes, and then, the rest of the Mandalorians have to try to escape. And Paz making his last stand. Like, hey, he was running around looking like the Hulk. He's throwing people, just tossing them away. Oh, it's like, you shot me? How did And just to see him be there, take them out, it was one of those instances though where you get distracted by certain things and you forget about little details, like when Moff Gideon asked for Praetorian Guard, which we have not seen yet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there are three people in red outfits with laser swords and stuff. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Oh, Paz is dead. Okay, end scene. Like,
Oh,
yeah, that's
no, it was. I mean, I know we'll talk about the monologuing, but there was such a beautiful bit of that minigun glowing. It was being used so much. Then he kicks the crap out of everyone else, and then you go, yes, obviously he's the toughest, but we have to show there's someone tougher, and that's from the Praetorian Guard. So it was such a beautiful buildup of dangers and toughness, and showing who the next one was, just wonderfully orchestrated. Rob?
Do you know what this? Do you know what this was? Because everything up to this was just kind of fun popcorn, blockbuster, Fast and the Furious. Doesn't make sense, but we got you there to the action. Up until this point, but then this is, to me, this is as Game of Thrones as Star Wars can get.
Yeah.
Like, this was a full on, like, for Star Wars, this was their Red Way. Everybody gets there. They have the plan. They're going to the forge. They're about to get the thing they got. Everyone's united. They're about to win, or at least make the steps to win, to come back. They just found more people. Everybody's singing Kumbaya. Yeah, the monster derailed that, but they all stayed together. And then everything went, just like you would in an episode of Game of Thrones, where it's like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right. Think about when, like, Catelyn Stark sits there and sees the armor underneath dude's stuff and sees, like, oh, wait a minute, something's wrong here. And just as it goes along, boom, big reveal. Empire's here. The bad guy is here. Like, that's just, like, it takes you on a, like, all of a sudden, then doors close. Hero trust up. Big guy goes down. Like, it's literally like the fight and the length that they took for this fight is not normal. This, again, showing what he can do. Again, this is family friendly, but they're doing as much, like, brutal, show as much brutality and strength and what this guy's up against. This really felt like nothing that they'd ever shot like before, because we're used to big 1-on-1 or 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 fights with Jedis, not with just people in, like, armor like this. We've seen them fight each other and things like that, but this is like the big, like, if, like, think of the Hound from Game of Thrones, like, saying, all right, there's not enough, these C words aren't getting through here. He's gonna have the big hero death. And that's what it really felt like to me. Even, like, them escaping by the skin of their teeth, her, like, kind of Arya dark sabering her way out. I don't know why I'm going there, guys. It made me think of, like, really good, like, better than the rest of what we, like, it's elevating the material.
Oh, sure.
And making it way more something that we really haven't seen too much of in Star Wars. We've seen everybody get trapped and blah, 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 but it was in the execution of this that was different. This really felt more like a season finale than a penultimate episode. But,
well, it's interesting because if you look at how, the kind of the structure, even from season 1, that was, we thought that things were bad. They were trapped in the bar, and that's when Gideon first pulls up, and that's the kind of, like, we're at our worst bottom point, and then they get their success and counterattack the next episode. Season 2, penultimate episode, is Grogu's captured. Well, actually, no, I think that was the one beforehand, because the penultimate one was the Imperial-based one. but still a similar bit up where they're captured at the lowest part. Now they've got to, reconnect and do a counterattack there. So we've got a kind of pattern in with the episodes that I think is good to follow up for those that think that it's all over with now. But they set it up beautifully, and you're totally right about the orchestration of it, because they give us all of our hints before. We show how what a tough fighter that Boz is, that he is like one of the top Mandalorians. Din is, but Din gets taken out as he's taking other people down with flamethrowers. It takes several of them to bind him up and drag him off so that Gideon can do his monologue. But Bo knows that she can't trust anything that Gideon says. Now you will give me the dark saber. He doesn't even say, and I'll let your people go. But she knows that he can't be trusted, so they have to hold him off and escape because she's tried that before. Paz, our toughest person, kicks the crap out of everyone and then gets taken down like this by the Praetorian guards to show how much tougher they are, so that in the next episode, when we do have to have that showdown, it makes our heroes who end up defeating them looking so much. It is very formulaic in that sense, but it's done so beautifully because they've laid the groundwork for the episode where nothing is surprising. You're expecting these next things to happen, and they still surprise you with. So I love this whole bit. And I love the fact we finally get Gideon down and he gets to have his big speech that he is the new Dark Trooper with the new Beskar armor, and he's been hiding out here, and he's going to, I love, aggregate the best of all of them. The clones, the Jedi, the Mandalorians, everybody can contribute something to my future greatness. It really shows how he is kind of different from the other Imperials that kind of eschew a lot of those other things. He could see the value in each of those to make himself stronger. So again, another beautiful Giancarlo Esposito monologue there of evil and how tough that I
am. Gentlemen, I hate to cut this short, but I actually do need to go. I have something I have to attend to.
Oh, well, yeah, we are going a little long here tonight. So, yeah, any final thoughts before you go? Or
no, I think I have said all that I can say. And your last two thoughts, gentlemen, finished up everything that I was going to say about Moff Gideon. So, yeah.
All right, Don. Well, thanks, man. We'll catch you next week for the big finale. And we'll wrap things up here.
All right, then. Have a good night, gentlemen.
Yeah, see ya.
Good night.
All right.
It's what happens when we go long, folks. So, yeah, let's talk Spies, because the title of the episode is The Spies. Obviously, we have more than one. We have Eli Kane in the beginning, who is definitely a spy in with the New Republic. But there's been nothing but talk about who is betraying the Mandalorian. Now, to me, the obvious one is the pirates. They've been on planet. If Moff Gideon has a base that he's flying ties and stuff around, they haven't seen any ships? They do just show up going, "Hi, Bo-Katan Kryze. Oh, you. We'll take you right where you want to go, right where the ambush is." And maybe that's a little easy, but they were my first thought of who the spies might be. Convenient. What did you think about that?
Well, I mean, I would think it's whoever got him out, right? Because they said Mandalorian's freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So I would figure it's probably the person. What's his name? That he got the two from the guy who was on Agents of Shield.
Of course, he's Hydra. Axe Woves. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, I'm already gonna go for the guy from Hydra. So I mean, to me, it just seems like he's he'd be the easy choice. I just feel like that's probably where it's gonna go, but I wish they would have just revealed it then, rather than later. But again, when you're thinking cliches, like obvious, like it would track that they wait till the very last minute again. But I really don't know. I mean, they've surprised us. It could be, any number of people, but I don't know. Maybe it's what's his face from oh gosh, I always forget what Carl Weathers' name is on this show. Grief, Grief Cargo.
Grief Karga. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's him. I doubt it, but I mean, I don't know.
Well, let me. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, let me jump in here real quick, because the other thing that a lot of the internet is going off is that the armorer is the one who's betraying them, and there is a certain amount of evidence to that. Most people are saying that she conveniently gets off planet. It's because she goes, "Oh, I'll take the wounded away," and she flies up to the planet, flies out, so she's not involved in the ambush. Now, Gideon's sending off ties and stuff to go take out the fleet, so it doesn't really necessarily spare her for that long. But there's a little bit of possible kind of support for that, and this will take a minute for me to cover. Back in the day, and in the day by this, I'm talking about the Clone Wars, Darth Maul, of course, took over Mandalore. And he did so by taking out Paz Vizsla and thus claiming the Darksaber that he was the leader. The Watch at that point split into two groups, one led by Gar Saxon, who was still loyal to Maul, and one, of course, led by Bo-Katan Kryze, who was like, no, this shit ain't happening. And that kind of began a lot of that Mandalorian civil war during that point. There is a character who is part of Gar Saxon's Super Commandos named Rook Kast, who appeared in a couple of comics originally, but notably in season 7 of Clone Wars, which of course was right at the beginning of Disney doing their Disney Plus return, which is around when Mandalorian came in. So about the time where Mandalorian established itself, we are introduced in cartoon TV mode to Rook Kast. Now, one thing about these Mandalorian super commandos, the ones that were loyal to Maul's Shadow Collective, is they changed the look of their Mandalorian armor. Instead of the Watch's blue, they took on the red and black of Maul. But they also started, some of them, decorating their helmets in spikes. Gar Saxon specifically had giant spikes on his head, very much in the form of Maul's spikes, to honor him. We see that almost repeated in Gideon's helmet in this episode as he lands in his new Dark Trooper armor. He also has these little spikes. And who else has spikes on their helmet? Only one other Mandalorian that we've seen, and that's the armorer. And while they're in a line from the front, they look like two big spikes here and two small spikes in the back, very much like Darth Maul looks. A little bit of a stylized version of it, but still, there's a familiarity to it. Now, to me, if both the pirates and the armorer are spies, then the armorer just took some of supposed wounded up to the fleet to sneak in, and what if they're not wounded at all, but they're going to pop up and fight out? So the fact that we have a character who basically worked for the Shadow Collective for Maul and then followed up with being Imperial, that's where Gar Saxon, as soon as the Eagles took over, Gar Saxon was straight with them, and they were on Concordia. There is a certain evidence that the armorer might be a spy herself. Now, I'm reaching into some circumstantial views right here. To me, the obviously is definitely more the pirates than the armorer, but there could be some interesting thing that the armor is actually Rook cast. Now, she and Bo did know each other because they were both in the same kind of Night Watch group, but this is years later. Voices could have changed, things could have gone on. So there is some evidence for one or both of these groups to potentially be the spy. I was curious what you thought about those possibilities there.
Well, I definitely applaud your commitment to remembering all the Mandalorian knowledge from the shows, because man, but that's where I kind of had a hard time in that series. But I remember vaguely what you're talking about, and that, I mean, look, we do this to ourselves.
Oh yeah,
you made the best argument for why it should be what you just said. I think you might have done you probably are one of the people that did all that research, you know what I mean? Like, and formulated this, and it's probably going to be much simpler. But that doesn't mean that you're not wrong. They just might not have put that much thought into it. But as much. I could be wrong, though. I could be wrong. Because Filoni, he does care about the lore. So it wouldn't surprise me, but that is the best option right there. I don't want it to be any of the other ones because those are so obvious. And yeah. I haven't been looking at the armorer because why would I? I'm also not making the kind of connections that you are. And I'm that's why I say I applaud you, because that's usually something I'd have caught. So I hope it's that. I really like that. That's awesome. That would be awesome, just to surprise the hell out of all those people up in space. You know, start swinging a hammer around. Not good.
Yeah. Well, and I, honestly, one of the potentials against that also, and Peter Griffin here in the chat, it kind of brings this up as well. Why would she betray her own people? Paz especially, who would definitely kind of, probably be on her side. So she is kind of betraying her covert Din as well as Peter points out in there, which I think does count against her, because I don't see that in her character unless, again, she's playing this long game of some sort and just realizes, well, the Mandalorians have to be taken out. I will survive in some form so I can be, Gideon's super commando leader and do whatever. So again, there are possibilities both back and forth. Yeah, I did a long research bit before we came up in through this, because there were some really interesting possibilities. And you are also right in the fact that we do this every time. We speculate into the extremes with the hints that we are given, and we are almost never right. But I still think the speculation is worthy, because it just shows how much we're enjoying this show. But we got one episode left. The big finale. This all has to be cleaned up. Anybody could die. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think they're going to take out Din, but some people think it's possible. Any last expectations and thoughts before for next week's episode before we wrap all this up? You're muted.
Sorry, it did. You unmuted, and I think I muted myself.
Yeah.
No, not really. I think we really went deep on this one. There was a lot of this is how it feels when you're talking about good Mandalorian. We cut it with our mentioning that the cliches that are in it, but it's not anything that we haven't seen in any other thing like Star Wars. And I'm sorry for the big explosions in the background. Apparently I'm in Madripoor right now. Because as soon as it turned like 70 degrees, everybody just started to bust out fireworks behind me. So maybe they're happy that the Mandalorians, was a good episode. I don't know, but yeah, no, we're really leading up to something interesting. I still think Grogu's getting taken. I think it's going to end on a down note this year. I think that there's going to be positives, like she's going to get the mythosaur or whatever, but I still think Grogu's going, man. I think they're going to separate him. But I know that that's probably not going to happen. but who knows?
Sure. All right. Well, why don't you let people know anything that you're doing and where they can find you?
Yeah. So Smirking Reviews is my main channel. I'm also working on Smirking Reviews Classics. I just recorded a new video, some audio. I'm putting up some stuff for another Rob's Never Seen. And through my Discord, these are all choices made from people like Darrin and my other friends on the Discord. So the next 7-ish or so episodes that you see on either Smirking Reviews or Smirking Reviews Classics are going to be choices made from my friends. I gave everybody a free review outside of no Fast and the Furious, no Twilight, no Fight Club, no Rise of Skywalker. Those were the only parameters, and it's going to be an interesting to get these all done. Or also, you can, if you've seen, yes, X-Men 97, we got some X-Men stuff coming to the channel, and I've just been kind of easing everybody into some of the weirdness you're probably going to see on my channel through talking about that show some more, and then Smirking Rob Plays, where we play on Twitch, all sorts of stuff.
Right on, right on. And of course, I'm D. This is my channel. We're here, well, at least for one more week, talking Mandalorian. We'll take a little break after that. We will definitely be back come June when Secret Invasion drops in. We'll be doing another weekly show talking about that. Might do one or two things in between now and then. I'll let you guys know if anything does come up. I got to sort of see how everything plays out. But if you do miss me talking to you, you can go to Audible and check out 2 books that I am doing narration for. Third one's on its way. It's the Splicefire series by B.J. West. Teeth of the Rakshasa is book number 1. And I got a link in the description below for book number 2, The Raptor's Nest. So if you guys like audiobooks, check out the sample. See if it's something that you want to hear. And it can fill in the time in between our episodes. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining. Everybody joining us in the chat live. We had Peter Giffen. We had Deborah. Eric Scott jumped in. Ramona Floyd. Great little discussion going on there. Always love to see everybody there in the chat. Everyone joining in the archives, thank you so much. And we will catch you all next week for the big finale.
Bye-bye, everybody. See you.